Welcome, everybody, to the first KoSI Roundtable. My name is Raphael Heim. I'm here with my colleagues Pablo Hoffmann and Angelika Teves. We are from the Social Entrepreneurship Network Germany and are representing SEND in the German consortia of KoSI. KoSI is a German abbreviation and stands for Competence Center for Social Innovation and is part of the European Social Innovation Alliance. So it's an EU-funded transnational project, and SEND is partnering up with a bunch of German organizations to build a German consortia. And that consortia, in turn, is partnering up with 3 EU countries, Estonia, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. And I can see a couple of faces from these countries in the room with us today. Shout out to you and a very warm welcome. Because these kind of formats, these roundtables, and actually also the project as a whole is really meant to be an opportunity for us to learn from each other. So we want to provide with these formats just knowledge sharing, exchanging best practices, and really strengthening the bond of social economy actors across borders. And SEND will be organizing these roundtables 2 or 3 times per year, and they will all be revolving around the topic of financing and funding social innovation. So if we can jump to the next slide, to the agenda. Today we'll be talking about 2 cases, Portugal and the UK. In both countries, we have 2 organizations that have developed a bespoke mix of financing instruments as part of a larger strategy to grow their respective social innovation ecosystems. And these mix of instruments are bespoke not only in the respect of how they address the diversity of social innovation or the social innovators' needs when it comes to financing and funding. For example, in respect to the life cycles that social innovations go through, but also their business models or impact models. And they're also bespoke in a way that they've crowded in different capital providers. So public, philanthropic, and private capital providers are partnered up with in these financing instruments to really grow the sector with them together. And not fully across the situations in the Netherlands, Estonia, and Luxembourg, but here in Germany, we have a lot of efforts already to strengthen the standing of social innovation, but it's rather a scattered landscape. And my colleague Pablo will give you a 5-minute input after our 2 speakers to provide a bit more of contextualization about Germany. But in general, I think it's always immensely interesting to hear insights from countries that have developed a holistic strategy like Portugal and UK, which is also politically endorsed. So I really hope that we can draw a lot of inspiration from our speakers today. And I really hope that you take the opportunity to pick their brain and see how they have achieved this trope over the course of the last 10 years. And without further ado, we can switch to the next slide. And I'm super happy to introduce to you our speakers today. On one hand, we have Philipp Essl from the UK. He's an MD and head of impact at Better Society Capital. And he focuses on the social impact measurement and management across the organization's investment processes and portfolio. And Better Society Capital has really been inspirational when it comes to securing and using dormant accounts and especially also how they use these funds to build the UK social investment market. And on the other hand, we have the second, but not less influential Filipe Almeida, president of Portugal Social Innovation, an organization that has really become a role model for a lot of countries across the world that seek to strengthen their social innovation ecosystem. And we'll be having a 30-minute discussion after our speakers today. You can, if you have some burning questions, you can already put them into the chat while they are speaking, and we'll try to pick them back up when we get to the Q&A. But yeah, 30 minutes, the opportunity for you to ask anything you want to Filipe and Philip. And I'm really looking forward to that discussion. But without further ado, I'm happy to hand over to you, Filipe. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Rafael. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you to SEND for the invitation, Rafael, Angelic, and Pablo. It's a pleasure to share this roundtable with Philip from Better Society Capital because it was one of the inspirations to the creation of this program in Portugal. Nice to see you all. So getting right away to the point, I'm leading the national public policy in Portugal for social innovation, which is called Portugal Social Innovation. And this program, which is a government initiative, was created 10 years ago in 2014 with two interconnected goals by that time. One, to promote social innovation in the country, to finance experimental projects that could develop new solutions for social challenges. But on the other hand, a second very important goal was to develop the social investment market as well. And to do that, the Portuguese government mobilized European structural funds. So our only source of funding to this date are European structural funds, namely the European Social Fund, alongside with the national budget, as it works in each European member state. But we are using European funds to achieve these two different interconnected goals. How do we do that? We've created, back in 2014, four specific financing instruments aligned with the needs of what we perceived as being the needs, the financial needs of the Portuguese social innovation ecosystem by that time. So these are specific instruments to achieve this goal. And how do we design these instruments using European funds? Well, first, we had to, they were designed based on two basic assumptions, actually. One is that each of these different instruments is aligned with a specific stage of development of a social innovation project. So it addresses different financing needs depending on the maturity of the projects. And the other assumption is that in each of these instruments, we must have a seat at the table for the investor, as we call it, the social investor. Can be grant-based or equity. Well, I will get into that in a minute. So these are the basic assumptions. Different levels of financing instruments for different levels of maturity to create pipeline in the ecosystem and try to organize the ecosystem. This was 10 years ago. And at the same time, a seat at the table for the investor, not using 100% financing source from European funds, but making a match with these social investors, as we call it. And diving a little bit into that, which are these four instruments? First, we created a capacity building instrument to develop management competencies in these teams that have social innovation projects, but are missing some managerial competencies. Then a capacity building program. Then we have a grant-based match funds, we call it Partnerships for Impact, where we finance, at least we did it, now it's a little bit different, but we finance 70% of the project, and the other 30% must be financed by these, what we call social investors, that can be private or public organizations, doesn't matter. Then we have a third instrument, which is the Social Impact Bonds Program, which I believe all of you know. It's an outcome payment instrument where we, Portugal Social Innovation, this public agency, acts like the outcome payer. And then the application must be done in a partnership between the investors and the service providers, but also the public policy organizations that are responsible for implementing public policy on that area. All of them make the application and we fully reimburse the investor if the outcomes that are previously contracted are met, the social outcomes. It's almost a typical social impact bond with some nuances. And then finally, we have actually a financial instrument, which is the Social Innovation Fund, that has a debt stream where we provide guarantees for loans, and then an equity stream that co-invests alongside with private investors in equity of SMEs that have social innovation projects. So the idea behind this architecture was to create different financing solutions for different kind of impact potentials and financing needs of the projects along their life cycle, and to address all these needs and to bring into the table not just entrepreneurs, impact organizations, but also investors. And these investors can be private investors, typical private investors, corporations, foundations, investment funds, but also public ones. This openness that we did to these public organizations allowed us to knock on the doors of municipalities that became a strategic partner to develop this ecosystem in Portugal, and also investors in these kind of projects, which make these kind of projects more close to local government and local public policy as well, which is actually an effective way to provide scale to some of these social innovation projects. So with these instruments, we approved in the previous programming period using European funds 698 projects in Portugal, which is a small country and for our scale is quite good, and including 2 years of pandemic, which was a very complicated period for all of us, but almost 700 projects developed by 481 organizations, mainly from the social economy sector, but also SMEs, also universities. We became agnostic concerning the nature of the organization that can develop these kind of social innovation projects. And from the investor side, 848 investors, mainly more than 500 corporations, business corporations, the biggest Portuguese foundations, but also more than half of the Portuguese municipalities, as I was saying. And these are the figures that we achieved so far. That now we're starting the new programming period with new funds. We created new financing instruments based on the experience that we had in the previous programming period. We are using these funds up until 2029. And just a quick note to end this brief presentation, because I think I'm running out of time, just to say that what we mainly learned with this experience in the last few years is that actually different financing solutions for different financing needs is a good way, an effective way to develop the ecosystem and organize it. That's what happened in Portugal. The creation of this specialized public agency with a clear mandate to manage these funds and fund the ecosystem was a very, very effective way also to achieve these goals, because Portugal Social Innovation became the main catalyzer of the whole ecosystem, the door where everyone knows where to knock if they want to make some connections, investments, or to have funds for their projects. So it was a very effective way. It's a top-down approach. It was the government to create this initiative. Actually, is on the other way around the world. Usually, it's a bottom-up approach. These social innovation ecosystems thrive to bring the public policy and government into their agenda, but this was the other way around, actually, in Portugal. And we created an activation team, which is quite important in our team as well, because these are people that are on the ground in the different regions of the country, working daily with investors, with entrepreneurs, making bridges among them and helping them to transform good ideas into good projects that then apply to our calls. And municipalities became strategic. We also funded some incubators, social innovation incubators, which were also strategic to create this multiplying effect in the territory along the whole country. So we are not funding only social innovation projects with direct interventions, but also these kind of incubators that created this national network around these ideas. So, and the main challenges was to create a common narrative, which is still a challenge, a common narrative concerning social impact, social investment, impact investing, social innovation. All of this is a narrative that we are still struggling to make it as mainstream as possible. And mobilizing the private sector was a hard task in the beginning. Now it's very easy in Portugal. The main organizations are starting to invest in social innovation, knocking our doors. We are partners of the biggest groups in Portugal. It's much harder to mobilize the public administration. And why we do that? Because we are using European funds. And one of the main objectives of Portugal Social Innovation is to create an effective link between these experimentations and public policies. Makes no sense to use public money to fund these projects and then public policies keep going in a parallel path. So we are trying to make these connections because, as I said, is an effective way to provide scale to some of these projects when they prove to be effective dealing with impact challenges and social challenges. So, Rafael, for now, I'll stop here as we agreed and open to the conversation. So thank you very much.
Perfect, Filipe. Thank you very much. I always think it's fascinating to listen to you, to really hear how holistic this approach is. You're including public administrations, you're including municipalities through these activation teams, incubators, and also the investors. I think this is an amazing approach, and I can say that it must be difficult getting this common narrative onto the road, but I think you've already made significant steps to make this a successful approach. So congratulations to that, and thank you very much for your input. Philipp, looking to you, how did things work in the UK? What is the story of Better Society Capital?
Great, thank you, Rafael. Thank you, Filipe, and yeah, great to be here. And hi everyone. I'm Philipp. I'm head of impact at BSC. So what I thought I would do very briefly is maybe just give you a bit of a sense of who we are, some stats that give you a bit of a sense of the dimensions with which we operate. Then probably go back a little bit to our own beginnings, because that's really been the sort of the source of learning, how we were set up, what did we learn in our early days, and how has that shaped, I guess, who we are today. So what have been the sort of the main lessons that we've learned along the way in terms of actually building a market, not just investing for impact, but doing so in a way that actually builds something bigger. So we are now Better Society Capital. We used to be Big Society Capital, went through a rebranding. And we are a investment market builder. So over the years, we were set up in 2012, capitalized through dormant accounts that Rafael have mentioned, 400 million plus 200 million of equity injections from 4 high street banks. This was sort of the 600 million got us started. And over time, we've invested that across different asset classes and that's precisely because we wanted to build a diverse, inclusive market. So to date, we have committed 900 million in total. And we have done so by bringing in other investors alongside us. Those are family offices, foundations, local pension funds, etc. So a very broad range of investors. And broadly speaking, for each pound we've invested, we were able to sort of get 2 additional pounds into the mix. So we have committed 900 million, and in total, including sort of that type of match funding, it's close to 3 billion. The market has grown tenfold in the same time. So we are now roughly at 9 billion. So there's a lot more capital that has come into this space, really reaching a broad range of outcome areas and impact themes. So we as a market builder, we never had a particular focus on a single theme, but over time we have seen that the majority of our investments have actually gone into poverty themes, poverty reduction themes, inequalities, health and broader well-being, as well as sort of fair transition in education, employment, and training. So those are the sort of the main areas, if you want. And we've made now more than 130 investments, and our capital has reached more than 3,500 enterprises across the UK. So arguably, it's been a success story, if you want. It's just in terms of sort of pure growth, but it's come with a lot of challenges, and we are by far not there where you want to be. There are a lot of areas where we're still trying to innovate and build infrastructure that helps bridge the needs of enterprises and investors, because that's ultimately what what we do. We're building infrastructure, including financial products, that are able not only to solve for the challenges and capital needs that enterprises have, but also actually connected with the reality that investors are facing. Before I go a little bit into the sort of what have we learned in terms of how we do this, I think it's worthwhile to go back to the beginning, because it was actually some of the foundational principles that really set us on the path that we are today. And I just want to highlight a few of them, because I'm aware that some of those might be relevant to where you are also in terms of, about the ecosystem in Germany. I think a few decisions that were made very early. One was that BSC should be a wholesale investor, it should be independent of government, it should generate sustainable returns, and it should be fully transparent in terms of what we learn, to share that with a broader ecosystem. So wholesale investor, what does that mean? That means that we actually do not invest directly in enterprises. We invest in funds, in banks, that then provide the capital to the frontline organizations. And that's, again, precisely because we wanted to create the market and not be the market in terms of our own capital. Right? Sort of we act therefore in a way to crowd in capital. So when we invest in managers, we do so with the scale, with sort of scale in mind. We always look at other investors that come in, or at least a pathway for other investors to come in. So that's the sort of the principle around wholesale investor. What that has meant, though, is that we've spent a lot of time and energy actually building the intermediary landscape, the institutions that are then able to allocate our capital. The second point was super important, the independence of government. I think it was early recognized that we should be independent in setting our own strategy to determine how to best live up to our mission, to deliver social impact in the UK, but also grow the market. And I think that has been important, because we play a long-term game. We want to be independent of political cycles, and sort of have the long-term good in mind. So really, really important. And the third piece around sustainable returns is equally important. We want to grow the market. We think we do this where we are able to demonstrate returns on a spectrum, but returns. Social investment is certainly not the answer to all the challenges, but it can be an important tool, and it can be deployed in different ways, because different investors have different return expectations. But at a portfolio level, for us, it is important that we are sustainable, and that means that if we invest in certain areas that are of higher risk, that sometimes even might require below market return capitals, we need to offset that with other parts of our portfolio that create higher returns. So that's been really, really, really important in terms of getting us started. What we then learned very early on in our early years was that it was incredibly challenging to actually start building that market for a number of reasons. Most investment was small, very skewed towards bank lending. The intermediary landscape was pretty much missing, and it was incredibly hard to actually deploy our capital. The initial mindset, and that's really, really important in terms of how we have shifted over time, was a market failure mindset. We thought what was missing was capital. So we would inject capital, people will come, take the capital, and deliver impact. We opened doors in 2012 and not much happened. Most of the incoming applications for investments did not match our expectations in terms of impact, understanding, sustainable business models, and the ability or the pathway to crowd in other investment. And that has had significant implications and impact in terms of how we had to pivot and adapt over time to actually make it work, which leads me to sort of really highlighting three lessons that we have learned to be really important. The first one is that we need to start with an understanding of the intersection of social issues and business models, and not financial products. A lot of investors start with a financial product, whatever that is, equity, a different type of a specific form of debt. We started to do it that way and it didn't work. So we went back 2014 in particular, where we did a broader in-depth exercise to really understand where social investment at the enterprise level can play a role to create both impact and returns. And until today, that really shapes our understanding where we see opportunities and where we want to develop the market. So that's been the first key lesson. The second key lesson has been that capital alone is insufficient to develop a market. So over time, we have built a very broad portfolio of investment and non-investment tools that help build the market. And what I mean by that is if you just look at the sort of the investment side, particularly in early years, most of our investments were cornerstone investments, first-time investments into funds, product, teams. We had to co-develop a position, often over the time of 2 years. Again, simply because it was just not there. In addition to our investment, we spent a lot of time on broader organizational leadership development of just building up fund managers that started to emerge in this field because we realized the infrastructure was not there. And we had to actually set up, develop new tools, platforms to help unlock demand for social investment. What we realized was enterprises, charities simply didn't understand the role that social investment can play. So one example is we set up a digital platform called Good Finance with hundreds of thousands of users, more than 500,000 of individual users today, that has played a crucial role in actually educating charities, social enterprises about the role that social investment can play to help in terms of resilience and growth for them. Over time, that has changed. Just to illustrate how our toolkit has shifted. Today, we see much more capital coming in. So a lot of our investments are now to double down where we see particularly impactful business models to help scale, to help de-risk, help other investors coming alongside us, help signal what we think good impact is. On the infrastructure side, it's not anymore just about unlocking capital, it's directing capital. So measurement, shared measurement, benchmarking initiatives play an increasingly important role to make sure that there's real integrity in terms of the market that we build. And also our policy engagement has shifted from broader sort of initiatives around unlocking, additional dormant accounts for grants that we can invest alongside us, to much more targeted initiatives around guarantees and sort of, permanent forms of subsidy that are needed to address the needs of particularly smaller enterprises and charities. Raphael, I'm sort of conscious of time. I might just stop here.
Yeah.
With those sort of 3 lessons, but happy to go into more details and also maybe illustrate it with a few examples in terms of what those underlying enterprises actually are that we have ended up investing in.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for your input. Such insightful learnings. And I really think Better Society Capital is this success story of a wholesale investor that has grown an investment market, a social investment market, not only by crowding in this capital, but also I really feel that you are also speaking the language of investors, addressing their needs and building that intermediary landscape to bridge the gap. So it's super exciting what you're doing in the UK. Thank you. And conscious of time, we've got a couple minutes. Pablo, I'm handing over to you. How are things in Germany? Give us some context to what you've heard from Philipp and Filipe just now.
Yes, thank you. I'll try to keep it short, so we still got some time left in the end for discussion and Q&A. Just because this is an event where we also have a lot of international guests with us, I'll just give a brief overview of the situation for social innovation and the financing in Germany, as well as what the German government has already been doing in the last couple of years, which is a lot. And also just to give you an idea of why we maybe need to talk about bold ideas still, such as a social impact fund, freeing up dormant assets. It's also in discussion here in Germany, just as you guys did in the UK, or whether or not we maybe need organizations that build the market, like Portugal Social Innovation or Big Society Capital. And I think before I start, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that obviously when we're talking about social innovation, we need to keep in mind the different contexts of our respective countries. I remember, Filipe, last November when you were in Berlin, you talked about like we can learn a lot of things. Obviously, we could talk about what you guys did in Portugal, but in the end, we have to find instruments and a structure that works for our context here in Germany, where we obviously are very lucky to historically have had a strong welfare state institutions delivering important services. We also now have a vibrant social enterprise ecosystem that often spark innovation, and that we have to keep in mind when we talk about what we need here in Germany in terms of an infrastructure for financing social innovation. What is clear, though, just to give an example of some social innovations that we have and the challenges that they still face when it comes to financing, is that we do not have a lack of ideas to solve our pressing societal issues. We do still, though, have gaps in our financing ecosystems to test out new ideas, but also to scale those ideas that have already proven to work. And I just brought an example with me, just one. I could name many, but just to put a face on the topic. And one that I brought is the example of the Ready School of Digital Integration. The Ready School is a relatively well-known not-for-profit social enterprise that we have here in Germany that offers education to migrants. It offers migrants education through workshops and courses in areas such as cybersecurity and web development, and thereby enabling participants to qualify for jobs in these fields. And I mean, Ready thereby is addressing two of the greatest societal challenges that we have in Germany nowadays, which is migration and the shortage of skilled workers. And since 2015, actually, Ready has achieved that over 25,000 participants have taken their classes and thereby gaining access to the job market, which has not only saved the state paying social benefits and created impact, but also supplied the economy with much needed skilled workers, so a double win. But however, like many other social innovators, the Ready School, there are oftentimes not adequate funds to scale their proven solutions. And in the case of Ready, the Ready School, actually, they have achieved already a lot. I mean, I just named the number 25,000. It's not to sneeze on, nothing to sneeze on, but at the same time, they run into huge financing difficulties every other year, especially now with the budget constraints and the economy in Germany. And currently, in the case of Ready School, there's a gap of 1 million euros for 2025 to continue their operations, let alone expand them with their already proven impact models into more communities and more areas in Germany. And in fact, there's a study by McKinsey that looked at some selected social enterprises, a handful in Germany, and found out that there's actually $1 billion potential for saving government costs if you would find proper financing just for these types of innovations. And that's just one example. But at the same time, it's not to say that the German government has not been active. We actually reached a milestone last year by launching a national strategy for social innovation. And also in the field of financing, things are definitely moving. I mean, many funding programs, public funding programs, have been opened up for nonprofit companies, which is great. There's been a pilot investment made in an impact fund that will invest in market-based social enterprises. There's a new funding program that supports intermediaries and ecosystem actors called Nachhaltig Wirken, which is one of the largest one that has been created has been open for the ecosystem so far. And this is all really great. This is definitely a lot of progress that has been happening. And but we also see that specifically in the field of financing, there's still some progress to be made. Because what we not have seen so far is a type of market building approaches that tries to provide financing solutions for every stage of the innovation cycle. For example, tailored financing solutions for these types of high impact organizations like the Ready School, or also instruments that incentivize co-funding, like blended financing schemes with commercial investors, or also match funding, for example, with philanthropic organizations like we've seen in Portugal. We also haven't had many attempts recently when it comes to impact-based financing mechanisms, like, for example, social impact bonds and outcome funds, which could be used to test innovative ways to finance innovative services in the social sector. So to sum up, I mean, things are heading into a good direction here in Germany, and the value of social innovations are being acknowledged. However, in the field of finance, there are still gaps, and specifically when it comes to trying out scaling high impact solutions and also crowding in more financing partners. That's the German context for now. And now I had questions prepared, but I see we're already running short on time, and I think there are a lot of questions in the audience. So I'll just give it back to Rafa, who will then opens up the floor to everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Pablo, for giving some color on the German ecosystem. And yeah, like Pablo said, let's open up the room. We already have 2 questions in the chat, which I'm just going to pick up. If you have any questions, just please raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll take it from there. First question is from Thomas Hüttich. He's asking on specific features of financial instruments, i.e. loans, that are different to normal SME loans. Thomas, do you want to elaborate just briefly, please, on this question, and maybe also specify whom you're directing this question to?
Yes, thank you very much, Thomas from Investitions Berlin. As to Philippe from the Portuguese social financial instrument, and the question behind is we are also having financial instruments for diverse target groups, and of course we would like to include as many as possible social entrepreneurs, and we also always have the question, what is it actually that we need to offer that would help to have actually more social enterprises, social entrepreneurs interested in our products, or that we actually meet their needs? Because I think there's a big question mark still whether we have from our point of view, whether we have a supply or a demand problem. And I would like to learn how there might be special features like concerning for example, the personal guarantee or the interest rate, or anything that makes it more fitting for the specific needs of social entrepreneurs.
So it's for me. Should I answer now, Rafael?
Yes, please.
Conversation. Okay. So thank you very much for that, because it's good to talk not only about the light, but also about the shadows. And now I'm going to deep dive into the shadow of what we learn in Portugal, because concerning this financial instrument, this specific financial instrument with the debt stream and the equity stream, the equity was quite successful, but it no longer exists. And I can explain why if you want. And the debt stream was a failure. We provided that to the ecosystem, but actually it was made available, completely available, by the time we were on the middle of COVID, and the Portuguese government was issuing lines of credit with no strings attached. And we were asking for social innovation projects to provide these guarantees for loans and blah, blah, blah. And it really didn't work. And my feeling, talking with the ecosystem, is that there is no market failure on that issue specifically for loans in Portugal. At least that's the feeling that we got. But it was very confusing because it was on the middle of COVID, and maybe things got there were some cross concerning these kind of challenges, but it didn't work. So we don't have no longer a debt stream that provides guarantees for loans, and it didn't really work. And I'm not sure if it is a problem of the ecosystem or if it was because it was in the middle of COVID. But I think that if we issued something like that in Portugal today, it would also fail. They are in another phase, the entrepreneurs. They really need partners, investors that can be partners with them, not just money. They need network, they need management competencies, they need to enlarge their solutions, and they are looking for active partners, not silent ones, as we were by that time. I don't know if this answers your question. Sorry for not being more specific than this, but that was our experience here.
No, thank you very much. That was exactly what I was interested in, and it's very interesting because yes, it's difficult for us as a public development bank to come up with ideas how we could help social innovation, social entrepreneurship with just financial instruments, and we see the need that, as you said, it's more about partners, network, management capacity, and maybe integrating this with a good offer of financing. But yeah.
Yes, but let me just interrupt you because we are short of time, just to say that actually, let me go a little bit deep just to say that that's why I talked about this activation team of representatives that we have on the ground. If we didn't have these specialized people in my team that work with entrepreneurs, bringing them into this ecosystem and bringing them into the possibility of being funded with our financial instruments, we didn't have the success that we had. So it's very important to work side by side with them to really dive into the different regions and territories and try to see where are the more dynamic organizations, the more dynamic startups, where are the entrepreneurs, and help them to transform their small initiatives in bigger ones. And then we fund these organizations. I would say that more than half of the projects that we are funding are projects that we started working with alongside with them before they apply to our calls. And with the debt stream, the thing is, we are not a bank. We acted as a wholesale in this case of the debt stream. We provided guarantees for loans, and the commercial banks were the ones who had to go into the market and speak with their clients. It didn't work because the banks were they were not prepared to talk with the clients. They don't know nothing about impact investing or about social innovation. So we were not the ones to make this activation. And that's one of the reasons why I think it didn't work. So that's why I say that I'm not sure if this is something that the market doesn't need. I think the conditions were not right in the governance of this model.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Filipe. The next question is for you, Philipp, about the Access Foundation. Björn Strüber is asking what role the foundation played and how Better Society Capital collaborated with them. Yeah, Björn, I think the question is quite straightforward. Do you want to add something to that, or should we have Philipp answer?
That's also a question because you mentioned, and that's really very interesting, that capital alone is not enough, and that you responded with capacity building and building up intermediaries and knowledge. But I think the Access Foundation also helped a lot in providing a different type of capital, or is this just my personal hypothesis?
No, that is absolutely spot on, and it is exactly part of that broader field building and infrastructure building that's needed. It also ties quite nicely to, you know, what loan products are needed and where did we see the gaps. So the history to that is that initially most of the products that were available were in the bank lending, often secured loans, and there was clearly a need for unsecured loans, which some of the larger fund managers started to serve. On the side, I think there was still a broader lack of awareness and understanding that cut across different types of organizations that I mentioned before. That's where Good Finance came in. I think sort of, Thomas, to your question, is it a product challenge, or is it actually that where enterprises are, they just don't understand enough yet in terms of the role that social investment can play. But in our case, so we dealt with that separately. What we then learned was that particularly on the smaller end of the spectrum, smaller charities, smaller social enterprises that were needing sort of unsecured loans in the size of 65,000 roughly pounds, right? So let's say 80,000 euros. That segment of the market, which was arguably the biggest segment in terms of number of organizations, was unserved. There was just no product available. And what we realized was that ultimately the product needed to be a blended one. So you needed grant money to come alongside our investment capital that would either serve as a de-risking mechanism, for example, as a first loss layer to de-risk the investment side for others to come in, or to actually provide capacity building funding for the enterprise to either, upgrade their management systems, tweak their business models to become sort of, quote, investment ready. And because of the inability of ourselves to provide grants alongside the investment, we advocated with a number of other organizations for a separate institution to be set up, which is now the Access Foundation. And the Access Foundation has been absolutely crucial in terms of, building that part of the market, and continues to be really important, to the extent that in the latest dormant account rounds, we have actually advocated for dormant accounts to be allocated towards the grant pot rather than the investment pot, because we see there the greatest need for actually subsidy. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip. I see your hand, Markus. I just want to go to one more question in the chat, which has been waiting there for a while, from Michael Unterberg. He's asking you, Filipe, about social impact bonds and how you use the EU structural funds in that regard, and how important are the tax incentives to crowd in social investors? So two questions in one, I guess. Filipe?
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, using European structural funds was a very effective solution to launch a lot of social impact bonds, because we got over a lot of public procurement issues that we don't have to do. We just use the funds, we open continuous call, and then we decide deal by deal, as the applications are made by these partnerships between the investors, the service providers, and the public organizations. We access these applications one by one, and then we approve the application with upfront social outcome contracts, and we go along. It's very, very easy. It has nothing to do with the experience of social impact bonds elsewhere. It's very simple to make this work. The financing model was not perfect in the previous programming period, because the impacts and the social outcomes were actually requirements for us to reimburse real expenses. This is a little bit technical, but that was a problem, because the investor had always an uncertainty about how much will I get back. But now we got over that, and we are really paying for results with an upfront budget that is divided by the number of people that has positive impacts, and then we pay one by one. And actually, because we are using European funds, we cannot remunerate the investment. And so we've created in Portugal in 2018 a tax incentive, a tax relief of 30% for all the investment in social impact bonds, despite the reimbursements in the future that they had. And that was interesting to bring different players into this system. Of course, not foundations, because they don't need this kind of tax incentives, but private organizations. But we are not completely successful as I expected, but that was our failure, because we didn't communicate, we didn't spread the word about this tax incentive as we should in this specific context, because we were dealing with different instruments. That's the problem of having so many different things. A small team cannot reach everything, but I think we failed on communicating this tax relief incentive, and so we could have more, but now we're working on that as well. So that was our experience, and from the from the design of the instrument is quite easy with European funds when compared with other experiences.
Rafael, maybe just to add, because we've spent over the last 10 years quite a lot of energy and effort on social impact bonds in the UK. We've broadly sort of invested across sort of 100 projects. So I'm conscious there are a couple of I guess, policymakers on the call as well. We did an external evaluation in 2022 about the public benefits of social impact bonds, and happy sort of to share that. But I think it's just such an amazing instrument, both from a sort of impact, but also from a broader public fiscal point of view. So we realized that the sort of benefit to cost ratio across our portfolio was 8.6. So for every pound invested, 8.6 pounds of value have been created, 2.4 just fiscal value in terms of savings. So arguably, you know, just from a broader impact perspective, really one of the most powerful things that we have done over the years.
It's great to hear. Michael, does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you very much. I have to yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Michael, if you have another question.
No, just we are doing grant schemes here in Hamburg, and we are looking for a bridge into public budgets, which is not easy because we are also a development bank, like counterpart from Thomas in Berlin. We are here in Hamburg. We are operate on a regional level, but we will look into perhaps some piloting activities to bring that forward, because I think that's missing at the moment. Everybody's looking at grants and equity and nothing in between, because I also would say that the debt road is not that easy if you want to include, and we have to include commercial banks as well. So we are looking at a bridge into public budgets, and social impact bonds and the experience in other countries could be a bridge, and even better if it could be done via structural funds. So yeah, thank you for that.
Rafael, can I share just one idea on top of this? Because we are testing a new instrument in a few months in Portugal that is a spin-off of a social impact bonds, where we make the contract directly with the service provider. No investor, it can look for investments elsewhere, but we are not making the contract with the investor. We are making the contract with the service provider, and we are reimbursing or paying the service provider not based on investments or expenses, but based on public budget savings that comes from the impact they provide. So this is a new way of using European funds. It will be tested only in Portugal as well. It's a pioneer program that we've been negotiating with the European Commission. They called it finance not linked to costs. And let's see if it happens, because it creates a very positive pressure also on public administration, because they have to make this all these calculations about investments per capita with public budgets. And we are paying based on that, not on the investment. So it's another way to look at it. But we don't have these calculations that Philip was saying. We didn't do that yet. We don't have the figures about the savings that came from the 22 social impact bonds that we approved in the previous programming period.
Right. Sounds super exciting, Filipe. Good luck with testing that, and please keep us posted on how that goes. I think we have time for one more question. Markus, you've been raising your hand for a while.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rafael. One quick comment and one question. I think the comment is about the implications of the two great case studies, and thanks a lot for sharing for the dormitory bank accounts discussion in Germany, because I think both cases show clearly that there is a need for blended capital. I think Filipe was clearly showing that in addition to the investment, there was also this capacity building and grant-based match funding. And also Philipp, I think, made clear that it would be a mistake to look only as Better Society Capital, but you need to look at it in combination with Success Foundation. So I think for any implications that we draw in Germany, it's really important not to have the whole dormitory bank accounts, let's say, focus on market rates return, because otherwise we will really miss the funding needs in the market. I think that is one comment. And the other question is actually for Filipe, whether you explain a bit more in detail what the role of the municipalities was and what you were developing, whether they were actually investing into financial instruments or co-financing social enterprises, or was more on the social responsible buying side. That would be interesting also to know for our very federal structure in Germany. Thanks a lot.
So concerning the municipalities, the main role was they co-finance with us these projects in a grant-based. For the municipalities, it was service provided by the organization. For us, it's a grant-based scheme, but always grant-based. But the main role before that is that when we make a partnership, informal one, with a mayor, with a municipality in Portugal, they provided us access to their networks of social startups and organizations in the territories. And that's where we begin. We begin to knock on the door of these entrepreneurs through the municipalities. And actually, the municipalities are our main source of understanding which are the main social challenges in that region. And that's how we match and how we access these applications. We have to really, as Philippe was saying, we need to start by understanding the social challenges and social problems, and municipalities provided an overview, a very interesting overview of the social challenges in the territories. So they became more than just financial partners financing these startups. They are actually active partners helping us to understand which are the main challenges that social innovation can address. And then on the end of this phase, they become the ones to embed these innovations in their local public policy as well, if it works. So they are really strategic in the beginning and at the end of the scaling of these projects. That's how they enter this agenda.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Filipe. Okay, I think we could keep on talking and discussing for hours and hours, but being conscious of time, I think we will have to stop it here. Filipe and Philipp, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your best practices. I think I can speak for everybody that this has been immensely inspirational. So thank you for that. And also thank you for all the participants for joining us today from Germany and abroad. We're happy to see you back here for the next KoSI Roundtable, which will probably be in the new year. But until then, I hope you have a nice rest of your summer and a good rest of your day. And take care.